Yep.
So, hello everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening after a long time. Very nice to see you all. So, I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for the audience to build up. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and BBC, and Sky News as well. And Bristol, we're on the big screen in Bristol.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as you can see from the title, that is the ticker that is scrolling across. We're going to talk today a little bit about self-management and the impact it has in leadership, both from a leader's perspective, managerial perspective, as well as an employee perspective. And in the future, and even today, but I think it's going to increase in the near future, the need for quality self-management will increase. Why? Because more work is done remotely and will be done remotely, therefore requiring leaders and employees to possess this valuable competency. But what is self-management? When you say self-management, is it about prioritizing goals? Is it about self-control? Is it about setting the pace for others to follow? So with me today to discuss this and more, we have Vlasios Sarantinos, HRM professor at the University of Bristol, where, as I said, we will discuss the importance of self-management in the virtual work setting, demonstrate self-control and the ability to manage time and priorities. So Vlasios, nice to see you all. Welcome again. How are you?
Always a pleasure. Well, I'm back in Bristol, so it's weather is nice for now and holding up for the time being, but it might be
for the next 20 minutes, you mean, right?
Well, probably. I mean, we're used to that. Yeah. So thank you for the introduction. As you say, my background is in academia, but also been a practitioner. So I'm a senior lecturer in HR in UE Bristol. And I'm really happy to be back in this conversation about a very important topic, as you said, self-management, because I think it mirrors what we've been discussing in previous sessions about how COVID and the move to online working has brought back to the surface old existing concepts, but it has brought it to the attention of organizations. So I think it's useful for context if we just all remember, because we tend to forget as we get dragged into our day-to-day business.
How work,
yeah, exactly. How, especially managers, leaders, but also employees, there's so much happening, so much going on that we always forget that these concepts and the literature and experience is actually going back many, many years. So, for example, self-management, self-managed teams is not by no means a new concept, but I think now it has come more to the public eye, to people's attention. So historically, self-management is a key skill, a key competence, as you suggested, and it revolves around people having the ability, literally, to manage their time. Now that it seems very straightforward. Yeah, great. I'm an experienced professional. I've got X number of years in what I do. I should be allowed and able to actually function in my own capacity and have the ability and skills to manage my own time. And in order to deliver whatever objectives, KPIs I have and operate at a certain level. Now, it is great as a concept, and I think it makes a lot of sense, particularly in specific industries where people are with knowledge workers and we use technology, and what you do can be self-contained, meaning what you do revolves some interaction and some group work, but what you do, your part of the project or the task or your overall work is very much contingent upon your own input. So I'll talk about self-managed teams a bit later. So and the expectation is, if you do have the experience, the knowledge, the motivation to actually work, although your manager is responsible for resourcing and line managing you, your colleagues. So you should be trusted to be able and responsible to work autonomously, if not independently, and deliver. And for the employee, it's amazing. You don't have anyone over your shoulder. There's very limited control. You can build trust. You can have flexibility. A lot of benefits. And from a manager's perspective, is again ideal because as a manager, and as there's so much happening. You've got a lot of people you have to support and lead and work together with. And you're also responsible and reporting to more senior people in the organization. So if you don't have to watch all the people and you know that they can be trusted and they are competent and they are in a position to work independently and deliver, amazing. Very little need for engagement,
supervision, and
exactly. Yeah. So it's more about being supportive. It's about knowing that you are there to provide any assistance or discussion about results, but not without, as you said, strictly supervising them. And that helps a lot with building a strong culture, because self-management hinges really heavily on the company culture and how much emphasis it puts on that. So I think that's the broader context in terms of self-management. Now with COVID, obviously, as all organizations had to, at some extent, move from traditional bricks and mortars working environment into remote setting, self-management became more prominent precisely because for managers were not in the same space with their employees, and the nature of the work necessitated that they would be working more autonomously. They would have more responsibility for what they do. So that has created a number of interesting questions and a lot of processes to try and adapt into this new environment, because it isn't that people don't know how to self-manage their own workload and what they have to do, but it's a little bit more complex when you are at home. So because you
really need to develop, I suppose, we're talking from an employee perspective, you really need to develop your personal productivity skills to manage both your time and your commitments, right? So, we agree that, it's a fund, self-management is something, that is fundamental, requirement for empowering both people and organization success in the new, let's call it normal. But before jumping off to discuss a little bit this skill, I think it will be, wise to define self-management, because there is a certain amount of ambiguity about the term. And what is self-management? I'm just on time every day. What's wrong? I am not self-managed, and there is a book, maybe you read it or you read part of it, from Daniel Goleman, that discusses self-management and refers to self-management as a combination of behaviors that focus on how people manage themselves in their work, but also in their life. Okay, so there are 6 traits according to him: self-control, transparency, very important, transparency, as you said, to build trust with your manager and vice versa, adaptability, achievement, you need to produce, initiative, and optimism. And all of those are very heavy terms. I mean, what is self-control, what is transparency, what is adaptability? But let's talk a little bit about, develop your personal productivity skills to manage both your time and your commitments. And, you're absolutely right. If you're a manager or an employee, you really have a great opportunity to work from home, build trust, save money, save time, But it's not easy, right? It's not easy because maybe some people don't like it and so on. So let's talk a bit about what is your view on, how can somebody, both manager or employee, develop personal productivity skills? What is this?
Yeah.
What do you
So
think?
you're absolutely right, and it's a quite an known and well established, but at the same time ambiguous term, because exactly it can mean different things to different setting. But I'll start with building on the six dimensions you mentioned to answer your question. So, for first of all, when it comes to developing your skills to be productive, and as a person who is self-managed, and as a manager who supports, and I think that's crucial. You're not necessarily managing people who are independent employees in their own project, but you are more of leading, supporting rather than supervising. I think that is a key distinction for the manager, to move away from the sense that, I need to check on people. I need to be able to control. I think a key principle to get self-management right, individually and for your team, is to evidence that you are placing your faith and your trust in their abilities and capabilities to work independently and deliver. But at the same time, you're not disappearing. You are there as a support. You are there to step in and provide assistance or intervene if that is required at whatever level, but not in a way that you are hijacking what they do, but no micromanaging, but as a leader. I think that is a key facet of effective self-management leadership. So, but having said that's the ideal, that's the end product. In order to get that, there are specific steps that you yourself as a manager and employees who are self-managing their workload and their time should really adhere to. And first of all is the ability, literally, to manage your time effectively, because flexibility that self-management can produce is great, but at the same time, you're still an employee working in a specific role, in a specific capacity, and you are expected to perform at a certain level and demonstrate specific behaviors. So I think more and more people say, I don't care if you're going to work 45 hours over the weekend, or if you're going to work like 12 hours a day and have 3 days off, provided you deliver when it's essential, when if you meet the deadline and deliver at the right standard that the customer expects, I don't care what you do. So, but that requires, and I'm looking at the employee now, first of all, discipline. That's quite important.
Yes.
There are many distractions that can detract you from what you're doing. So discipline is important. Self-control, as you mentioned, because you don't really have peer pressure. You are, operating in a very, very self-contained environment. So it is essential that you work out a schedule and you manage your time within that context. So taking your breaks, working as many hours as you want to, or when you want to, that suits you and you deliver. Often that can be trial and error, especially if you are new to this. And, there's a very important but practical theme, procrastination. Often people find themselves perhaps spending hours in front of a screen, not necessarily be very productive. And that can be because they've been far too many hours in front of a computer screen. And, productivity dwindles if you are in front of a computer for 18 hours without a good break. So I think there are specific systems and approaches that people can be trained to adapt when they are self-managing their time. Obviously, there are specific metrics and specific measures we can use to assess performance. So, and I think that is the end product, what you're doing in terms of what you're delivering, and also your own well-being, because there's no and this is the dark side of self-management, isolation. So people, and this is something that relates with COVID as well, people should not necessarily operate in silos where they have no interaction, they do not interface with their colleagues. There should be some engagement. So I think finding the right balance is crucial to ensure that self-management works at a personal level, and to start building the experience, the know-how, and the competencies that will allow you to be productive within that environment. But in order to do that, and finding the right balance, you need to ensure that you know what you're doing when. You are flexible in adapting, because often you have a new project and previous experience might not be exactly what will work for now, and you have to adapt. So you build the work around what you need to do and how you need to operate, ensuring you are delivering without burning out. But at the same time, it has to be transparent. So although we say you are autonomous in what you do, if I, as a manager, need to have a conversation and understand where you are at what stage of the project, I should be able to have that information. So as an employee, you also have responsibilities to let your managers and your leader know what's happening, and if you are on time, if you're not on time. And communication is another crucial aspect. Sometimes often confuse being self-managed means that there's very little communication. In actual truth, communication is a key element in ensuring that you build that environment of trust, and you foster that culture that will allow people to self-manage their workload, but also engage with other colleagues when that is required. What I've seen is people sometimes get so absorbed in working in what they do that they forget that they are part of a bigger team, of a bigger whole, and there's
yes. I mean, so, look, what you, as you said, being part of a bigger team and being part of something bigger, and I think here, as people's locations, work locations, maybe some of the duties change. I think both leaders and employees, we are likely going to need to evolve on how we manage our commitments. So, for me, for example, I've been working, both remotely and on site for the last 7 years. So at the beginning, so it's not something new. So for me, if you take me as an example, at the beginning, it was learning how to manage my calendar, my online calendar. And that was the essential skill I needed to learn as I advanced into management, because back in the days, I lived and died by my calendar, because I had to learn to use my calendar to follow up on meetings, because I'm not in the office. Hey, listen, we have a meeting, come, So you really, need to use, for example, I really need to learn to use my calendar to build dedicated work time to complete my commitments. But I think what is crucial here is, and that goes back to the organization, and as you said, culture, is to understand how to add value to the company, So for example, learn how your organization works and where there are opportunities to add value. And you have to understand it sometimes from different perspectives or viewpoints outside of your department. For example, you really need to know, and that goes back to employee engagement and company culture. You really need to know, do you understand do you understand your KPIs? Do you understand the expectations? Do you understand how important is when you hit your KPIs? Do you understand how your position adds value to the company, and you are not just a number in the payroll system at the end of every month? So that goes. that goes, I believe, into the bigger picture of organizational culture, behavior, KPIs, good recruitment, even expectations in your first day or your first week.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? The bigger picture, yes.
Right. Yeah, I think self-management is not necessarily something, in order to do it successfully, do it sustainably, and do it across the board. It is something that cannot happen in an ad hoc basis. So as you say, you need to start from the culture, the strategy, defining the work volumes, defining individual level tasks and job descriptions, and starting from inculcating that into people. So making it clear that they have that opportunity to be self-managed, but also clearly defining the expectations, the behavior that they should demonstrate, the requirements, and making it clear to themselves as employees what they do, how it sits within the structure, and how does it add value to the organization, to the team, to the department, to what their colleagues do. And at the same time, how does this reflect on their own career? How will it help them improve in terms of career progression, in terms of skills building, in terms of transferable skills? There's a whole gamut. So you're absolutely right. In order to make it systematic, and in order to be in a position to be successful in creating that added value through self-management, you need to start with the bigger picture, set the right ingredients in terms of strategy, in terms of culture, in terms of systems and processes, and get the right people from the beginning, provide them ongoing training and support, and the right systems to ensure that it works. For instance, performance management, appraisals, there should be that conversation about how things are unfolding, and if people might be feeling isolated, or they feel that they are lagging behind in terms of what they should be doing, and they require some support. Those processes do exist and should be complementing self-management. So self-management sits parallel to those functions.
You talked about training, and self-management skills. I do believe that take time and is a multi-year process. It's not something that can happen overnight. And I think it even comes, you develop self-management skills even sometimes when you're 5 or 10 years old. It depends sometimes on what job your parents do. If you see a father or the mother that works in the military, I'm sure you're going to have self-management times. But if you have sometimes your parents working in the public sector, being half an hour late at work is not a big deal. It sounds funny, but it's true, because we become product of our own environment. If you see that discipline, you can't be late, you need to be disciplined. But, and I think it requires time. I think you would agree, for people to find what works for them, and then obviously with the right company culture, the right leader will give that people autonomy and opportunity to not only complete the tasks, but grow professionally.
It's an ongoing journey. I mean, even people that have been working in such roles for years and years, they constantly learn. And I think the situation with COVID, again, changed and challenged even people who in the past worked in a sort of like autonomous capacity. And experience helps, because you get to know yourself, and you get to know your strengths and your weaknesses. But again, it very much also depends at the nature of what you do, and projects can be more diverse and more different. So often you need to be open-minded, and you need to be flexible, and also adapt. So you hone your skills in terms of, as you said, project management, time management, communication, trust, to ensure that you can operate within a self-managed environment, but at the same time be adaptable. Often people get in a position where what they knew or how they operated before doesn't necessarily cut it. So, and they have to rejig how they do things in order to be able to operate. So, for example,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, go on. I mean, I just want to a small break to say that the quote, the saying of "that's how we always done it." It's you know.
Well, I think if something that the situation with COVID and now in the post-COVID landscape has taught us that doesn't apply. That doesn't mean that some core skills and experience you've built do not have value. They have great value, but at the same time, you need to maintain that resilience and that flexibility to make use of your best practice and adapt it, tailor it to what's happening right now. I think that's finding the best equilibrium. It's vital in terms of self-management. But no, you're absolutely right, and you highlighted another important dimension, which is the broader cultural context. So, for instance, and obviously you spent a considerable time in Asia, where perhaps the focus in terms of discipline and commitment to the organization perhaps is in sometimes stronger than other perhaps more flexible Western cultures. So potentially self-management will operate slightly different and will be led slightly different across different contexts.
I mean, if I could, I can share an experience through my executive coaching, one-on-one with leaders, decision makers, and managers. What is eye-opening to me over the last year and a half is that I realized that when I coach leaders and managers, that they often spend a lot of time trying to improve employees' weaknesses rather than trying to enhance their strengths. So you know, like you have an employee that you classify him as D, they try to make him a C. What I believe that the best option for organization should be focused on improving people from B to an A. And giving them more responsibility, giving them more empowerment in an area in which they can excel, So I think by rethinking, and evaluations to focus on strengths, I think managers can really empower workers, employees, to focus on developing their strengths, something that if you think about it, they will be naturally inclined to do. And another thing that we need to accept, we need to accept that, for weaknesses, we need to accept that sometimes, some people will struggle in this aspect of work, and so on. So what do you think about this? Like, rather than trying to make a average employee good, why not take the good employee and make them great?
I think it kind of goes to back to talent management. But I agree with you. I think first of all, there's no such thing as a bad employee. I think that's a mindset. So I think everyone has their own skills and talents and potential. I think the first step is to recognize that everyone can add value to the organization. So I think you're right. Focusing on the negative aspects is something that people tend to do sometimes by default, because we as a manager, it takes experience and it takes the necessary culture to be able to look past what you consider as problem areas. And I think focusing on building on the strengths and, as you said, enhancing, leveraging the talents that people have and providing them support will, number one, act as a very strong positive reinforcement, because people will feel that they are valued and they are acknowledged and they are part of the organization. And, I think it's clarity, where I am, what you feel as my manager, my strengths are, and how those, if developed, can add further value to the organization, rather than, oh, you're underperforming, you don't have YZ skills, you need to develop in order to become a good, I hate labels, employee, as you said. So I think we need to start from recognizing the good points in people and focusing on that. Now, but having said that, at the same time, we should be looking at problem areas not as something gone wrong, but as development. So there's nothing wrong at the same time, acknowledging that employees will be struggling, and that might be holding them back from actually evidencing their actual strengths. So, and it can be something simple, or lack of experience, or it could be, they need some support at infrastructure level. But I think focusing on the strengths is crucial, while at the same time ensuring that they are supported to not let their less developed areas keep them behind. So I think it's a combination of the two. It's positive reinforcement and looking at the strength and the looking at the potential people carry, because all employees carry potential, and building and fostering that culture within that environment, but at the same time ensuring that there is the appropriate support and intervention in where there are problems in terms of lack of appropriate experience, or the employee needs that support. It is there to ensure that will not hold them behind. So I think that's the spectrum. Interesting, with please go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your
I was gonna say, with self-management, bringing it back to the topic, I think this is very important, because and I'm approaching now from a manager's perspective. Easy to say, okay, I've got a team of 5 and we have this project and everyone has a deadline, say in a fortnight from now. I'll check in with them like in a week's time to see how things are unfolding, and you check with them on a one-to-one calls, and everyone is saying fine, we're working according to schedule, everything is going perfectly fine. And then you get to the end and you see that some work by some individual is not up to scratch, or is missing some specific aspects, or is not the right quality, and there are problems. So my point is, it's what I've seen is employees can get so absorbed, so immersed in what they do, that can actually not acknowledge that something is not at the right level, because they don't have that critical eye or constructive conversation with the manager to say, okay, I've done A, B, C, I think this about D, or what do you think about Z, for instance. So because they are the only person judging their work until such point that they have to deliver it, often they might miss something. And that is the role of the leader, to provide that additional impartial look, not in a criticizing way, but more in a constructive, collegiate way, to ensure that the people are not doubted about what they do, but they've got that externality embedded within their work to ensure that the work is kept within the in check and on time, if that makes sense. So I think that is quite
it makes
so it's vital, therefore, it goes back to the culture, creating the work systems that will enable and facilitate people to have that engagement, but also it's the presence, not presence as in I'll write emails to you, but as a leader to make it clear that you are there to support them and provide, I think, some space for those conversations to be held. And I think if there is mutual trust, then the people, because people who are working very much autonomously build their confidence and build their value of self-worth, as being empowered to do so. So the manager is not necessarily supervising, but as a colleague, engaging with them to ensure that
engaging, and exactly going from controlling, supervising to engaging, empowering, and so on. And one of the last thoughts I have as we go to an end, maybe another 10 minutes, is I would like to share a story. Or I think what's important here, both from employer and employee point of view, is self-awareness. Like, what I mean is, take care of yourself and find time to sit down and think. And what do I mean by that? As I grow older and as I gain more experience, therefore my self-awareness, I think, improves. I remember when I was in the UK, 25, the lifestyle was different. It was more go, go, go. It was all money, money, money. It was, right, I don't care about you, I just care about me. It was a different era, different economy, different environment. So as I age, as I gain more experience, I realize for myself that if I want to produce at a high level of work, I need to exercise every day. Exercise, my sport is I go walk and I go to the gym. I used to play football and other things, but now we can't. So I walk and I go to the gym. So, and this for me does a couple of things. First, it allows me to remove stress, and stay on a even level emotionally. And second, I realize that when I exercise, I am able to let my subconscious work and my subconscious mind on those bigger tasks behind the scenes, because often when I finish exercising, when I realize how to proceed on something that has been, when I finish exercise, I'm thinking about it and so on, I clear my mind, then I find myself sometimes coming up with an answer that I was thinking before, because I think I see things more clear, right? So whether your choice is running, I don't know, yoga, exercising, or taking a nap in the afternoon, or watching your favorite program on Netflix, what's important here, and the point I want to make, the main takeaway, is build this time into your schedule every day by knowing yourself. Okay, so for example, I always prioritize family and exercise over my work by controlling my calendar. Do you know why? Because if I know I'm actually don't prioritizing, but it looks like I'm prioritizing it for self-management, because if I know I need to produce work at a high level, if let's say I have a coaching, a engagement with a CEO of a leader, and I really need to be on top form because I want to support the guy, right? It's my client. I prioritize work and family, but I do it to actually prioritize work, because I know if I do this, I need to exercise, I need to take a shower, I need to have some food, my family need to be okay doing something else there, so I can actually deliver. So take time to think what works for you, because here we are sharing ideas, we are sharing, and there is no black or white.
No.
So this is my last tip for people, whether you're an employer or an employee, take time to think what works for you, because what works for you might not work for me, and so on. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And as a leader as well, that is very important to remind your staff or your team to take the time for themselves. One of the key issues perhaps with self-management in the COVID era or the post-COVID era is burnout and overdoing it. I think people are becoming increasingly more workaholic because that flexibility can keep you shackled to your computer. And I myself find spending more time working than I did when I was in the office. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily productive. There's a fine line between hours spent and being productive, because at some
point you actually accomplish. Yes,
exactly. So So it is an essential skill to know when you've reached your limit or when you're approaching that limit, and find, as you suggested, simple things to have that work-life balance, setting your priorities straight and managing your work according to whatever schedule you've got, and say, this time I'm going to block it for work, and it's going to be quality time, and I'm going to do what I need to do at home or in the office. And the rest of the time, I'll exercise, I'll spend time with my family for recreation activities, whatever.
Without checking emails, without checking WhatsApp. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, it's easier said than done. I know I'm better at giving advice than actually implementing it myself.
Yes.
But what it is a quintessential fail-safe, because your body and your mind will give you clear signals when you are approaching that limit or when you've actually exceeded that limit. And it might be late sometimes clawing back from that. So I think it is essential for leaders and employees to recognize that, work is vital. You need to concentrate and spend the time and devote the energy to deliver at the right standards. But at the same time, in order to do that, you also need to recognize that you're human in the end. And invariably, if you work in the office or you work from home or you work in a different country, you need to build in, even if you have to force yourself to get into that habit of creating the space for yourself and for your family and for non-work related things. Because if you do that, then you will be able to be far more productive with your work too.
Yeah, that's the most important part. I guess productivity, right? Productivity, because because
we shouldn't confuse time spent and productivity or quality results. People, that's one of the key things with flexibility and self-management. So you can work 40 hours on a go and produce something that other people would produce in 5 days, working 8 hours. Some people have that particular crash course style that they want to work intensely and then have a big break. Other people prefer to spread it out and intersperse their activities. But I think within that, you need to have that fail-safe of, striking a balance between work and you.
So what are your couple of minutes, your tips about priority management then?
Yeah. I think it's, first of all, run a diagnostic. And, looking at what you have to do, if it is a project, if it's a position, look at what are the expectations, what are the behaviors, and, looking at what is expected from you and what resources you have at your disposal, and plan your work around that in terms of creating the habits and the patterns that will allow you to be, as we discussed, productive, developing your skills that will enable you and will carry you through to remain productive, okay? But at the same time, do not be afraid to engage with your colleagues and your manager when that is required. It might be simply to discuss that things are actually going well, but that pit stop is essential to maintain that engagement and to renew the empowerment. We shouldn't forget that we rarely are single units. We operate within a bigger mini society, the organization, and there are support networks and there are colleagues, even when you're working remotely, that you must and should work together with and collaborate to ensure. Even with self-management, there are often self-managed teams and everyone is responsible for the end product. So even if you're working within a specific area, your work feeds into someone else's area and their work overlaps with yours. So having that rapport is essential. So going back, running the diagnostic check, working out what is expected, how you can adapt with that environment, and making the best use of the support and resources, but also as a leader, providing those resources and support to your co-workers or to your colleagues, will create the necessary structure, the necessary environment, culture, and systems to maximize results, and at the same time add value to the organization and empower people. I think those are my final thoughts in terms of a blueprint organization and people can have within this situation.
Well, this is the first thing I do actually. When time is the most precious asset anyone has, right? And sometimes you realize yourself, maybe when executives or managers and upcoming talent, leaders don't have enough time. They don't have enough time to do everything they want, or they don't have enough time to do everything they need. They really start to feel overwhelmed. And what I do through, I have a full time management priorities coaching engagement. It normally takes 3 months. It is breaking down into four areas, four steps. And the first step that we do is we track their time. What I give them a paper with 15 minutes intervals, and they track their time, preferably in 15 minutes or half an hour for about a week. So they basically create a very simple tracking sheet that shows the time intervals, and then we go and evaluate. And sometimes the results are, it's absolutely astonishing that they realize how much time they spend on things they can actually delegate. And delegation, I think delegation is important. Not trying to control everything and do everything.
Yeah,
because it's impossible.
Delegation and devolving what you do is vital, but I think in order to do that well, as you said, is vital. So what I've come across is often some managers delegate, but delegate what they in the wrong fashion. So the way you communicate when you assign someone to do something is essential, because they need to be clear about what it's expected of them. They need to be given the autonomy to deliver, okay, and the trust. So it's not something condescending.
Yes.
I'm just giving you something to just, because this is very low level. This is a crucial part that I'm assigning it to you because I know you've got the skills and abilities to deliver at that level. And by doing so, adds value to the organization. You'll get credit for the work, and at the same time, it puts your skills into good use. And I think sometimes in succession planning, I see that it is part of engaging with the person who will be succeeding you and passing on some of the duties and responsibilities to help them grow into the role, as we say. But again, delegation is vital for leaders. But the way they approach it, the way they communicate it, and the way they engage with their staff in terms of clarity, in terms of sense of purpose, in terms of what they're doing and how they're meant to do it, is vital to get the delegation to operate in a way that's a win-win.
A delegation is a bit of a sensitive matter, because I suppose you want to delegate, but you don't want it to look like you're dumping shit to others.
Yes, I think it's not like, as you said,
I said it too bluntly. I said it too, but
in a military setting where you've got orders and you have to follow them. It's not like that. It's something that you as an employee, when you're given a task, you should know why you're given this task, not because as your manager doesn't have the time and can't be bothered. It's because this task means that they are placing their faith in you in terms of being able to deliver that, and how that task will help you learn, grow, and will add value in essence. So I think that's...
You talked about success. You talked about succession planning. Are you doing any work on this? Because I actually, again, one of my coaching frameworks I have is succession planning. It's a very long engagement. It takes I would say between 12 to 18 months. A full succession planning process for an organization with very little infrastructure could be 12 to 18 months engagement. So are you doing any work on this? You
do.
brought it up.
I'm involved with talent management and also as part of that succession planning and also with resourcing. So yes, I'm involved in various aspects, both in terms of research, but also more practical context. Really happy to discuss about it in a future session if you want to.
Yes. Yes, and normally the coaching framework, it's for succession planning is 3 phases. First of all is the assessment, when I understand how, let's say if you are my client and you tell me I want to get a promotion, so I need to groom a successor before I get a promotion, or I want to exit my business but the business is too dependent on me. What do I do? Or for example, we've been growing so fast, we don't have any HR infrastructure in place, and I worry that soon we will have some real growing pains in terms of recruitment, in terms of HR. So normally it's a 12 to 18 months engagement. We can maybe give some tips in our next video where it's about assessment, understanding how, let's say, you define succession planning and what a successful outcome will be, then coaching the client to come up with ideas and insights. And the last part is about implementation, in parallel with the development and action planning, coaching the client to implement, and succession planning is really about implementation, because if you don't implement, they're just the ideas, right?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the design phase is important. You have all the information, but as you say, it's when you actually go into the application, to the implementation phase, that you will see how effective your design phase was actually crafted.
Yes.
In terms of, but I think it's the implementation phase where you will come across bottlenecks and glitches and problems.
Yes.
You will have to iron out. So yeah, but you're right. I like that 3-step framework. I think definitely we've probably have our topic for the next conversation. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's only for managers and leaders and high level, because it goes really deep. It goes even into behavioral coaching, perceptual coaching, because sometimes I realize we identify, sometimes some executives, they have what I call limiting beliefs that sometimes are holding them back from scaling their business. For example, they believe that if I don't do it, nobody can do it, or they have this limiting belief that actually holding them back, so it's or sometimes there are some attitudes and behaviors that prevent them maybe from retaining or maybe engaging staff, and then we shift those to more effective and productive habits. So, but it's interesting, but I think we need to have the right audience for this, because it's a little bit of it's a very strategic concept. I mean,
And I'll just finish off with this last one. You're right. Some people are really an organization even can be very person-centric, and people often are fearful of letting go and starting to devolve what they do. And even when they know that they have to train up someone to succeed them, there's always that gap there, and that it revolves around the mindset, and as you said, helping managers and leaders overcome that fear that there's no one else but them to deliver the work or the project, or to take on something. So I think that's crucial, and I think that revolves around the organizational and individual level culture. Great.
Yes. Yeah, it's I have something that I call the war room, where I have let's say the client, they find a conference room virtually or physically, but now virtually, and they post photos of each key personnel and upcoming talent, pictures. Okay. And then the client and the top management, let's say the leadership team, can discuss each in terms of development potential, performance, and what they need to do to keep moving up. And it's like a small retreat. It's like a smaller exercise with senior leaders can really be a powerful exercise when it's facilitated, because it really gives them a perspective when see the other person, what can they do, what they cannot do, and so on and so forth. And you'll be surprised, Vlasios, even in some big companies, in some large organizations, some leaders and some managers sometimes are not even doing some basic HR practices required to recruit, retain, and develop a pipeline of leaders. It's in big organizations as well. I'm not talking about a small SME, but in big organizations. But I think this is shifting. I think, and I'm writing this in my book that we have discussed, that I think you will be writing a chapter as well. I think now companies, when they recruit, they should be looking to recruit people that will develop in future leaders. Otherwise, you will end up having what I call a revolving door recruitment policy. You hire one resigns.
Yeah, you're 100% is future-proofing your business with new talent is essential. Otherwise, you simply end up in a dead end. You're 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Vlasios, thank you again. Pleasure, honor, and thank you for your valuable input. Yeah, thank you, and we'll talk private again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye for now.